Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about Gareth Edwards' 2023 film, The Creator. Okay, and I want to talk about creating our art as dungeon masters for different ages. Okay, and I want to talk about this because they massively screwed up the age parameters for The Creator. Okay, and there was a huge mix-up that I want to talk about, and so we're going to talk about the mix-up for age for The Creator, and then we're going to talk about the possible mix-up that can happen with you as a dungeon master with the 12 to 17-year-olds who play. So Dungeons and Dragons can be played by 12 to 17-year-olds and adults, period, right? And that is interesting. That is really, and because that puts us into a space where we either need to ensure that every single person at the table is an adult, and then we can have complex and challenging stories, or we need to make sure that anyone who's coming in that is not an adult, right, that story, that we sacrifice the complexity and the maturity of the story in order to make a story that is not going to traumatize 12 to 17-year-olds, right? And the reason why we're talking about this is I could not believe what happened with Gareth Edwards, The Creator. Okay, so let me tell you what happened with The Creator. By the way, I'm almost positive. I do know this. This is correct. So The Creator is PG-13, right? So, but there was a massive misconnect on how this film was promoted. Okay, all right. So I go to the movie. Right, I get there. Movie's at 3:40. I roll in about 3:45. Right, there's somebody sitting in my seat. Right, and I'm like, okay, I'm in this seat. I go in, and there's this guy, and I'm looking, and I'm like, what's happening here? This guy's sitting in my seat. Right, so he's sitting in my seat, and next to him is like a 6 or 7-year-old. And next to that is a 7 or 8-year-old child, right? And I'm like, what is happening? And then there's two more. There's 3 adults and 2 children, right? And I'm like, that's an odd. Like, what are those kids even doing here? Like, they can't possibly be here for Gareth Edwards, The Creator, a movie about humans fighting AIs, right? That cannot possibly be right? This is art house Star Wars. Like, what is happening here? Right, so and this movie's gonna be like a Neil Blomkamp movie. Like, this is like, what is happening here, right? Like, so then I look in the row in front of me and I see a mother and a 7 or 8-year-old child, different family, and like, there's gummy worms, like, bought from the concession stand, and I'm like, okay, this guy's sitting in my seat. I know what happened. So I go back out and I go to the manager and I said, hey, I'm sorry, you have me in auditorium 1, and you booked the wrong movie. You think that Paw Patrol is in that movie, but the movie The Creator is in that theater, is in that auditorium, in that theater, in that screen, room, right? And like, in that specific theater, you have the Paw Patrol audience, but I think you're about to show them The Creator. So the guy comes in and he's like, no, it's The Creator. And so he goes in and he says, sir, you're sitting in this gentleman's seat, right? And so the guy's like, yes, I am. We bought 4 tickets, but like, we needed, but we have 6 people and we bought them in 2 different groups, and he could shove over. And I'm like, no. And so this, and, I'm like, no, I ain't going nowhere. That's my seat. Like, I'm going to, I picked it. I'm going to sit there, right? So this family splits up, right? Like, and I'm like, right? And I'm like, first of all, you shouldn't have brought those kids to this movie, right? And I'm still not convinced that you don't think you're seeing. And so then, before the movie starts, the guy comes over and goes, sorry about that. And I was like, sir, are you seeing The Creator? Right? And he's like, yes, I'm here to see The Creator. Right? And I was like, wow, wait. So then we get into this movie, and there's like at least 3 kids, right, who I think would be very happy to see Paw Patrol, right, who end up watching a child with a hole in their head the whole film, who curses and kills people. Like, legit. Like, a child who curses and kills people. Not a joke, right? Like, and not a small number of people, like a lot of people, right? And so you just brought your 7 or 8 year old child to watch a movie where they will watch a child murder people, or like straight murder people, right? Like in mass, like, and I'm like, what is happening? Like, so this is the issue, right? Gareth Edwards, the creator. Oh, by the way, I really haven't had a chance to say this. I thoroughly enjoyed this film. I loved it, right? Like, a movie doesn't have to be commercially viable for me to enjoy it, right? But this thing was absolutely horribly promoted. It was not communicated to parents what this film was, right? So, the lesson for dungeon masters is if you have even a single person in the 12 to 17 year old bracket, right? You need to make sure that is a completely non-traumatizing story. It is extremely important, right? And the reality is, when we have anybody who is under the age of 18, it is extremely important that we are delivering them a story, a narrative that is non-traumatizing. It is extremely important, right? And so as Dungeon Masters, I just want to take the time to remind you of that. Also, I just want to say right now, like, my stories are highly complex, right? And highly mature, right? And they don't have any kind of like adult content or anything. It's just a mature story, and there's a lot of death, and there's no like, what's the best way to say it? I don't really discuss intimacy at all in Dungeons & Dragons games, right? There are relationships, right? But we do not discuss in any way anything that would be physical. Physical intimacy is absolutely never discussed in my game. It's veiled, as they would say, with the safety tools, right? And honestly, it either doesn't happen or the screen goes black, right? Like, I just do not do that, right? And to be clear, right, there's a lot of combat, there's a lot of interaction, and there's a lot of exploration in my games. And because of that, I don't run for minors. Like, I do not run for minors. I like the reality, and the reason why is I have been running for adults so long, right, that's my rhythm, right? So if you are in a position where you are a dungeon master for a mixed group of adults and children, or if you're running for all, actually, I don't want to say child, right, for a group of 12 to 17 and then a group of adults, right, which is within the Dungeons & Dragons sphere, make sure that content is non-traumatizing. Because I very much think that the kids that went to see Gareth Edwards, the creator, were definitely going to be traumatized, right? Like, there's no way you could show a child cursing and killing in a film and children are like, oh, hey, that was great. Like, it's like, I cannot believe that. I don't think those parents had any idea of what movie they were watching. And I do think that this weekend there will be a lot of people coming out going, why wasn't I warned? This was not a movie for kids, right? Like, and so I do think they did a terrible job promoting it. So what I'm saying is make it very certain that anytime you run for anyone under the age of 12, anyone from the age of 12 to 17, you make it non-traumatizing content. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.